the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we have James Sampson with us from FileInvite. Welcome along, James. Good to see you.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
Before we start, maybe you can let listeners know where you fit into this big wide world of tech in
Wide
New
world
Zealand.
of tech. It is a wide world. So I'm founder and CEO at FileInvite. So FileInvite, we're a secure document collection platform. So a customer portal technology for requesting sensitive information. Get used a lot for applying for mortgages, immigration, tax, accounting, right across the board really. So if you need to get information off your customers, you shouldn't use email, and our portal makes it seamless for the end users supplying documents and data, and it flows through into the business, seamless for the business that's getting it. So
Love it. Great. Well, looking forward to delving into that during the show. Of course, lots of tech news of the week as well to delve into.
Yeah.
And should say a big thank you, of course, to our wonderful show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark HP, and Gorilla Technology. Great to have their support and, of course, their broader support for the technology and innovation ecosystems here in New Zealand. But delving into the tech news, I will start on the what's been happening, particularly from a local perspective. Probably the big announcement for me in the last week was really hearing about Serato being acquired, and I'll have to look back as to when we had the CEO on the show. It must be at least a couple of years ago now, I'm thinking, but it could be a lot more because I lose track of these things. But look, just they've been an incredible story along the way. Such an innovative firm that have done so well on the global stage. Particularly with serving that market of DJs, and to hear that their technology has been acquired, I guess. There's always kind of two sides to the feelings of yay for the shareholders, but it's always there's that level of like, when our best businesses end up in global ownership. But of course, we know lots of good things have come from these sort of acquisitions in the past, and money that gets invested back, new startups, and so on. So I think it's pretty encouraging, especially when it's one that's I think the numbers that I saw were. It was certainly over 100 million, but I think we might have even had a little bit more detail on that. Anytime the Overseas Investment Office has to get involved, that means they've kind of been over that
It's always a giveaway.
Yeah,
they've been at it for a while. I think it's always good to see Kiwi tech doing well on the global stage, like you say. But I think for me, the fact that it's remained New Zealand headquarters, New Zealand staff is just fantastic. That's definitely the good side of it, because like you say, you'll get overseas money flowing in and investment opportunities, all sorts of things happening there. So good on them.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already seen some of the flow on from the success of the business. For instance, ChargeNet, the EV charging network that's been I think very important to New Zealand, and having that network of electric vehicle chargers around the country. That's investment that's been able to be made because of the success of the Serato business, over the years. And no doubt with this acquisition, it'll lead to other investments and other startups getting support in the future.
Yeah, totally. And I think having that repeat in the local ecosystem of founders that can invest back in not only the investment but the experience is just invaluable, and you kind of see second, third, fourth generation of startups coming through. It's yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, so let's see more of them.
Yeah. Now, also we've heard about Araake Energy Research Centre that secured 70 million in funding to invest in what they're doing with trying to move things forward as far as sort of transition towards sort of sustainable and sustainability from an energy perspective, based in New Plymouth there. So that's a fairly big investment.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see what flows out of that.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like there's some interesting stuff that they have been doing with wave energy and that type of thing. But
decarbonisation.
Yeah.
Lots of things going on.
I mean, we're pretty ingenious Kiwis of finding new ways of doing stuff. So it's pretty cool to see getting behind finding new ways for energy. So yeah, be watching that pretty closely.
Yeah. Yep. And then just one that's just come in the last few minutes from Spark. They've made an announcement around 5G networks. So they've indicated they're commencing building 5G standalone networks. So they've got their existing 5G as have the other telcos in terms of one NZ and 2 Degrees, but those use a 4G for their core or their base connectivity. And so Spark say they're the first to launch 5G standalone network locally. So just good to see that the constant competition that we see between the networks and ongoing investment, because it's we all benefit from having great communications, and especially the high speed, low latency communications that are really part of the mix with 5G.
Yeah, hot off the press. Yeah, no, it's that competition's great. Obviously, the One NZ announcement a while back with the Starlink opens up a whole bunch of areas geographically. So this will be great for speeds and things. And people are nomadic with digital nomads now, so you can work from anywhere.
And having now all three networks have made announcements around the satellite connectivity. Although I did see One NZ got a little bit of a rap on the knuckles there. I think from the Commerce Commission around the sort of 100% coverage statements that they'd been using. So I guess it's hard to get everything right all the time and to please everyone. But I think we understood the sort of the message that they were trying to send in terms of satellite connectivity. In terms of you're going to be able to get it pretty much everywhere, as long as you're in the right spot. You're not in a cave and varying other things. You're not in the shadow of a hill or a building or whatever it is. So that's but look, that's why we have these regulatory bodies and government entities to sometimes push back on the enthusiasm from marketing teams. Now, I guess looking at the global stage, there's been all sorts of things going on this week. I was quite excited to hear about India's launch and to see a little bit of footage of that heading off on their moon landing mission, and that they're doing something that looks pretty exceptional if they can pull it all off. And we do know with space these things aren't always perfectly successful, but best of luck to them. And we are in just a world where things as far as space Go seems to be, really trucking along at an incredibly exciting pace. If we look back a few years, and it was kind of, when it came to space things, it was pretty boring. There wasn't really much going on, and now it's sort of going nuts. In every which direction. Including here in New Zealand on so many fronts. In fact, we should just give out a little reminder that the NZ Aerospace Summit is coming up again in September. Let's just double check the dates, 11th and 12th of September. For those that have any sort of connection, or maybe thinking that's the next step for their career, then the Aerospace Summit in Christchurch is the place to be in September. So yeah,
that's pretty cool that New Zealand's got an aerospace summit.
It is so cool, and it's it's growing quickly. It's a really exciting event, and we have literally dozens of companies now in New Zealand within the that broader aerospace sector, of which a lot of those are doing things in space, and more and more investment being attracted. And I think just a lot of innovation seems to be happening in New Zealand, and we just need to kind of keep that ramping up, support them, make sure that the government plays their part in terms of facilitating these things, helping them forward rather than slowing them down. And if all those things work together, I think it will have a really, really big impact on the economy and on New Zealand over the years ahead.
Yeah, to our point earlier with Serato, right? We've seen a flow-on effect from the success of Rocket Labs, and Peter's been actively investing in some of the startups and seeing that experience come down. So yeah, it's a perfect example right there of a whole industry that's kind of being spawned out of New Zealand and becoming a bit of a competitive advantage. So yeah, exciting.
Yep. Oh, it really, really is. And, I think we'll probably end up with, it looks like we'll end up with quite a mix. So there'll be some really small firms that are able to operate and, to generate profits from New Zealand without having to be, huge, well-funded entities that are doing more niche things. And then we get the other players that are, really moving ahead at quite a pace and hiring all sorts of people, and the tens of millions or hundreds of millions of investment sort of rolling in their direction. And long may that continue. I see Rocket Labs having a sneaky look at Rocket Labs share price the other day, and they seem to be on their way up again for those that are holding a little bit of stock. I couldn't help myself. Yep, it's like got to support this sort of Kiwi innovation. So somewhere over $6. Let's where do we find the numbers today?
It's a great one.
$6.89. So according to this, today they were up nearly 10% if you include the after hours trading. So not a bad day for those that have been in a position to make a solid investment there. I'm not quite in that category, but
it's always good for the kids on Sharesies as well.
That's right. It's great. Another one of our local success stories there with Sharesies, doing some good stuff. So I think we'll follow with interest. How India get on. I think we're waiting till late August for things to kind of touch down as far as the moon's concerned. Very, very exciting. Last week I think we spoke a little bit about Threads, which is Meta and Instagram's Twitter compete platform. Twitter killer. Looks like they've they've started with quite a boom, but some of the reports that we're seeing suggest that the time people are spending on Threads is already dropping off, and I guess that's what we've seen with the other competing platforms is there can be a bit of excitement, and certainly not at the sort of scale of what we've seen with Threads with the other ones, because they're able to translate across and bring across so many from Instagram. But yeah, I don't think it's all over for Threads yet. That's and neither is it for Twitter. I think there's still seem to be a lot of people sort of saying that Twitter's dead, and it's like, well, I'm not sure it is. Yeah, you what you see on these different platforms very much a reflection of who you're following, and whether you can find kind of your community, your people on there, or whether you're just looking for news and so on. But it still seems to be I think at the moment both of them are actually pretty lively in my experience. So there is room for platforms that aren't the biggest as well, which is maybe in some ways a surprise to us, because we were always sort of social media. It's like, well, there's a big dominant player that kind of owns most of the space in a particular area, and that's really the only one that can work. But actually, maybe we can have a few players.
Yeah, well, I guess it's like other areas of society, isn't it? You find your niche and you go on there. But yeah, I mean, Threads has had the big head start with the Instagram link, so that's always the thing. Trying to launch something's getting that critical mass on for the first time. So they've been able to successfully do that with 100 million odd people signing up. So I guess the key will be to see if it can keep the momentum going. But like I say, I don't think Twitter's dead by any stretch, and with Elon in behind it, I would always expect him to come out with something interesting to change the game. So, and obviously the rivalry between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk seems to be heating up. So
yes, yeah. I'm
looking
forward to seeing that Zucker punch.
Yeah, Zucker punch. I hadn't heard that. It's good. Have they got a match set?
I haven't seen any dates yet, but I don't know. They take each other out, and suddenly we're down to two founders.
Yeah,
anything's possible. So
yeah, exactly. So, but either way, it's going to be interesting to watch and see what happens on both fronts, on the Zucker punch, but the rivalry between platforms, because like you say, quite a few have tried.
Yeah,
there seems to be a bit of a creep back to Twitter in most of the occasions. So yeah, be watching with interest.
Yeah, and we've got we heard news over the last few days as well around XAI. So here's Musk at it again. I mean, how many things can he have going? Listened in and caught a little bit of their Twitter live spaces, Twitter Spaces chat. I think it must have been over the weekend, and it looks like this is another quite a serious thing from Musk. The people on the team seem to be heavy hitters. So he's not mucking around by the looks of it. So we'll see where that fits in. But he's talking about this new AI entity, crossing over and doing collaborations with Twitter and with Tesla. So some very interesting times ahead. It's still, just kind of blows my mind in a way, as just how much that Musk and his company seem to be doing. There's always sort of something going on, and I don't know whether that's just the power of how he uses Twitter, and if everyone else is doing, just as much, we're just not hearing about it. But it does seem as though he has a hugely, oversized influence on the world of technology. That's for sure.
Yeah, he definitely seems to be able to juggle a lot of things. To be CEO at the same time on multiple companies, incredible. But yeah, I mean, a really interesting situation with XAI. I think whether or not that was his plan all along with Twitter, hard to know. But definitely with AI, it's all about the training of the AI, and you need data for that. Data is becoming the big commodity. So Twitter certainly gives him a big pool to work from. Yeah, but he's quite good at collaborating between his companies. So, yeah, it'd be very interesting. Yeah.
Microsoft, they seem to be reasonably regularly in the news, sometimes on good fronts, sometimes not so much. I guess on the sort of the friendlier side, they're kicking to the curb Calibri, their default font for the last 16 years. So it's still going to be there, but Aptos is the new font, or the new typeface for I don't know for how many years ahead, but for the next window of time. So it's I don't know. I as a youngster, type was one of the areas that kind of caught my attention. So I was reading books. We didn't have the internet back then. I was reading all these books about type and typography and the history of it and so on. And that was actually came from my interest in technology, because I guess one of the most sort of disruptive areas in the 80s into the 90s was sort of the digital publishing or desktop publishing world. And so that was this kind of crossover between the media world, which I guess I'm still interested in, and the technology world, which I'm still interested in. I do follow these sort of things. Maybe I'm a bit more of a nerd on them than most would be, but it caught my attention.
I'm a typeface nerd.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So to be honest, I'm happy to see Calibri going, mainly because the capital I and the lowercase L, you could never tell which is which.
Yeah.
So I was pleased to see there's finally a flick on the bottom of the lowercase L. But yeah, I've always been a bit of a I don't know. Did you ever see the Comic Sans criminal site? That was hilarious. Don't use Comic Sans. But yeah, the Times New Roman, we're seeing the progression. So I quite like the new Atlas font. So that'll be. I had a look, and looks like a good step forward. So interesting. The driver obviously is such high resolution screens. They need sharper font to be able to use it on. So
it's looking back to those sort of early days of technology and the GUI, the graphical user interface, and I used to stare at what was it
640 by 480.
I'm thinking of the Mac screen. Was it at 9 inches? I'm gonna check now because my memory could be failing me. It is Mac. The Mac Plus had a 9-inch screen. And I mean, this was the cutting edge sort of publishing, machine originally, right? These early Macs. So they had a 9-inch screen, which is, not dramatically bigger than our smartphones today, and certainly a lot smaller than most tablets and certainly laptops. 512 by 342 pixels. And it was, monochrome and resolution of 72 pixels per inch. And if you dropped, I can't remember what it was, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 at the time, you could get a printer that would give you 300 dots per inch, and that was just
the dot matrix that would
cutting it. Oh, that was the laser. The dot matrix was that was a shocker. But
We're showing our age now.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, things have just kept stepping up, and now what we're seeing on our screens goes beyond what you would get, in terms of the sort of top results out on paper from a computer, and you're seeing that on your screens with billions of colors and all the rest of it. So time to step up the type and make that appropriate. Now, on the flip side for Microsoft, something that's not so nice is they've been talking about how basically hackers were able to get in to Exchange Online and Azure AD accounts. They just did a rebrand this last week, so Azure AD is no longer Azure AD. They say Chinese hackers basically were able to steal an inactive Microsoft consumer signing key and somehow used that to breach into these government email systems, which is a pretty shocking scenario. And if they got into government ones, presumably they could have got into really any accounts that they wanted. When you get that, if you're able to get that sort of level of access, that's pretty unprecedented. And for a chunk of time. The door's been closed now. They've obviously alerted entities involved, but it highlights that we're all at risk from data privacy and cybersecurity things if the top companies in the world continue to be hit in one way or another. I don't know what you do with that information other than it's a reminder that we all need to keep sort of stepping up from a cybersecurity and a data privacy perspective.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I mean that's obviously the online email system that Microsoft has, and that's the common denominator that we're seeing is email is the weak point in just about every company's cybersecurity. I think the stats are 9 out of 10 cybersecurity breaches start in email inbox now. So I think what we're seeing is the what you take from that is the constant reminders you shouldn't be sending sensitive information on email because it's definitely a weak point. Most of these breaches are starting in email, and if you've got sensitive docs in there, then you potentially had a data breach if someone gets into your email. So, I think just recently they found a document data set that enables identity theft. It's worth about $1,000 US now on the dark web. So there's real money in getting sensitive documents. And so if you're a mortgage broker or someone dealing with sensitive documents day in, day out, and your inbox is full of information, then
it's not a smart place to be.
No,
very dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, you think if you applied for something 5 years ago, all your sensitive information is probably still sitting at the bottom of your mortgage broker's inbox right now today. So,
not a good thought, is it?
Yeah. So it's a bit of a scary thought. So it's good to see moving away from things there, especially globally. But I do think New Zealand's got a bit of a ways to go.
Yeah. How do you see New Zealand's doing? Because I get to sort of see it through with my company Gorilla Technology. We're often doing audits on the technology and the cybersecurity within typically sort of smaller to medium firms, and I don't know, every time I look at the results of one of these projects, it kind of there's always a bunch in there that just reminds me that that we've still got a lot of work to do as a country on this front. What are you seeing with those that you're interacting with?
Yeah, look, I totally agree. I think a huge percentage of our customers are offshore, and so about 4% of our clients are still here in New Zealand. So we get to see the broad range, and New Zealand is falling behind when it's coming to privacy and security, which is kind of sad because we led the way back in 1996. Our Privacy Act was kind of forging ahead, but definitely our privacy standards are far weaker than, say, the likes of GDPR out of Europe, or the CCPA and things. And even in Australia, there's a huge wave. I mean, they're getting targeted a lot. There's a lot of data breach news coming out of Australia, so there's a huge focus on security and best practice out of Australia. We haven't seen that as much here. Part of that's maybe because of the size of our population. We're not as big a target because someone's looking for a big data set,
Well, and it's interesting that if we look at New Zealand, and we've talked about it on the show before, there's not much in terms of teeth to the legislation here when compared to other markets. And your comment there kind of just triggered a thought that often the companies that are getting breached are Australian owned, right? And so in Australia, they might be getting, they might get a huge fine or be told to set aside, a lot of money to deal with some of these incidents. And then here we're just saying to the Australian companies, no, she'll be right, mate. Yep. It's not, we're not necessarily doing a lot about it. And I'm sure from that perspective, a few Kiwis would say we probably should be, we should be leveling up, particularly on those firms that have got the backing and the scale to be able to afford to do these things right, but have, deliberately or not, have not put in place this sort of level of protections that they should have.
Yeah, well, even just taking accountability when it happens. I mean, the most recent was probably the Latitude breach, right? With coming out of Australia, we're getting all the notifications here as consumers because it's covered by the Australian notifiable data breach laws. If it was the other way around, would we have, got that? I think the fines are something like $10,000 maximum fine or something. It's a slap on the wrist with a wet bus ticket versus Meta just got fined, was it 6 weeks ago, $2 billion under GDPR for taking consumer records out of the EU and saving them in US servers. Like, it's a pretty big difference in terms of how data privacy is treated. So, I'd like to think that as a country we can go on that journey to try and improve. I think part of it's probably there are factors, like I say, this population size means maybe we are less of a target, and maybe our she'll be right kind of culture plays into that a bit as well. But increasingly, we're going to have to level up to play on the world stage because even the European legislation, if you've got European citizens living in New Zealand and you're storing their data, you're still actually caught by the European legislation.
So you can send money all around the world, but you just don't have to, pay in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely opportunity for us. We're pretty innovative, but it'd be great to see us kind of tightening things up on data security.
Yeah, it's a journey. But I hope we will see. Yeah, I mean, I think if you kind of look a bit more broadly, the areas of where legislation and technology cross over, there needs to be a change to kind of a bit more like the agile methodologies that we kind of operate within the tech sector, right? It's about continuous improvement and, having things continue to, get iterated on rather than, I don't know, I don't know if you can relate waterfall technology to legislation. I might be going a little bit outside of my field of expertise here, but yeah, sort of the approach where this legislation and a whole range of areas is updated very, very infrequently, and it seems like for most of the period of the legislation, it's actually not a good fit.
Oh, absolutely. And this is all coming to a head because AI is developing so rapidly, and AI needs data to be trained.
Mm.
And so there's huge questions coming up around the data and who owns the data and what's happening to the data. And, we touched on it with Elon's going to use Twitter's data for training XAI. He owns that. Well, therein lies who owns data. But,
Yeah.
The laws, it's just becoming so grey. I think the FTC, was it a week or two ago, just filed against ChatGPT around, breaches where some searches are coming up in other people's answers. You've got data safety and things. The whole thing's coming to a head around the rapid moving forwards of AI and then the legislation around data privacy, because the two go hand in hand. So
yeah, well, I mean, we could see AI, slip way back, right? Because actually, that they've overstepped the mark in terms of what they're drawing on. And when you look at kind of the niches with, let's say, use ChatGPT and you ask it to research something or to write something, and your topic is quite niche where it doesn't have a lot to draw on, that's where it tends to hallucinate or not do a very, very good job. So if suddenly all the data that they've been getting access to is sort of firewalled off, or they're not able to tap into it, then suddenly AI potentially becomes quite limited. But there's always ways around these things. But yeah, I think we have a very fascinating period ahead. A couple of other things I want to mention before we sort of jump into hearing more about FileInvite. Just quickly, in India, we have a company who are saying that they've let go 90% of their tech support team to outsource the job to AI, and that they've been able to drop their sort of response rate for support queries from 1 minute and 44 seconds to 0. Sounds a little bit overstated, and I'm a little bit skeptical. But there are some areas where actually you feed in the right data, and depending on what the queries are, where actually AI can probably do a faster job that looks further than a human, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. It's even the fact that they're using the terminology AI outsourcing, given that India was a large source of outsourced labor. So it's almost
That's
like
right,
you've kind of got these tiers, because surely there's trade-offs, right? I mean, how you'd want to think that the accuracy of a human on that at the stage of that data set would be maybe a little higher. So you're going to have to trade off. But, really interesting times, I think. Yeah. If it's going to work on your data set that well, and it is that the numbers are accurate, then, or not overstated, what's that mean for things? Hopefully that means we can use that human capital for more sophisticated type things and things that way.
Yeah, look, and I think that's the approach, isn't it? To look for how you can utilize people on other things, but it will cause pain and disruption as these things do. And then the last one was reading around Russians getting hit with a warning: the hour of reckoning has come. And what was quoted by metro.co.uk as a petrifying TV message after the Russia varying TV stations across Russia were hacked, and so this content was pushed out, and I think it's just kind of fascinating, but hey, it's this is the sort of stuff that's going on where people aren't and organizations aren't protecting themselves well. I don't know if we'll get a sort of a full story on what happened, whether it was a particular technology platform that they were using that was kind of compromised behind the scenes. Seems quite likely, rather than a whole lot of individual media outlets getting individually compromised. But
it seemed to be fairly coordinated across multiple ones, which should look like that. But I think you're right. It's probably a little embarrassing. So we probably won't hear too much, but it's the new scale of warfare, right? Cyber attacks is part of conventional warfare. So yeah.
So I'm keen to hear more, and I'm sure listeners are, around sort of the FileInvite story, because how long is it since you started? Now it's been a good few years, but last year you raised was it 10 million?
10 million Kiwi.
So there's obviously some real enthusiasm for what you're doing. It sounds like the very, very large majority of your customer base is certainly outside of New Zealand. How have you done it?
How have we done it? Wow. How much time have we got, Paul? No, it's depends when you start the clock, I guess, because it's spun out of one of my previous businesses. Zyber is one of the leading web agencies here in New Zealand. We had the problem at that stage. We were a high volume business building websites, and so we'd be building 200 websites at a time, and having to get all of the content assets to build websites, the homepage images and the text and everything else, when you've got 200 in production, was actually a major problem. We were running spreadsheets, trying to chase people. And so we built a tool that would allow customers we could track what we needed from them and that type of thing, and automatically ping them and remind them. And it just slashed kind of turnaround times, and we thought, man, other people could use this. So we rebuilt it, took it to market, and it was the neglected little brother of the web agency for a few years. And so that's why I say, when you start the clock, we took first capital 2016 and started sort of scaling it from there. And when we first went to market, we thought it would be a tool that other media agencies would use as well for the same purpose. But straight away, we saw this real spike around financial services and that type of thing. So, not wanting to boil the ocean, we focused in there, particularly within that mortgage use case. So, a mortgage broker has to request a lot of documents to assess a loan or to get the bank to assess a loan. Even today, that's still predominantly happening over email, and I used that example before. And so we completely changed that. We've changed the whole industry in Australia. We've got 1 in 3 brokered home loans going through us over there now.
Fantastic.
And it's proud to say that it's kind of the industry standard now that you wouldn't send an email. If you're sending an email as a broker going, hey, can you send me your driver's license and passport, in the same breath as your bank's going, never send credit card details over email. Like, it's kind of like, proud to say that that's kind of frowned upon now, and everybody knows that you should be using some sort of secure requesting, collecting technology like us. And so did well there, and then moved focus, or not moved focus, but added the US to our focus, and spun up a team in an office over there and been really going hammer and tong. And hence the raise last year was to keep putting fuel on the fire of that. So it's startup's never a straight line. So
No.
but that's kind of the abridged version. Yeah.
Yep, and how you find in the US market, because it's such a big market. Comparing it to New Zealand is, they're kind of a million miles apart. To Australia, I guess maybe there's a few more similarities, but I mean, it's still roughly sort of 10x the population and the economy, more so.
No, it's, I mean, big market, big opportunity, a lot of complexity. I think is probably the simplest way to put it. This bigger market also means more solutions and more complexity. But I think we're a right time, right place business. As I say, we started, it was around efficiency of collecting things. And the three key pillars for our product has always been, productivity, because all the data comes in and we clean it up and it gets dropped right straight into your system. So huge, productivity and time savings. I think one of our clients in Australia was saved 60,000 hours in the first year of dropping it in. So we're talking millions of dollars in terms of,
That's impressive. Wow.
So that was always a big key.
That's a great win.
Absolutely. I love, time saving for our clients. But the, customer experience is the second pillar. So it's exponentially easier for customers to get stuff through. That pain of someone sends you an email, hey, Paul, can you fill out these PDFs and sign the stuff and send copies of stuff through? It's just a link and it's just there in a portal. You do it and it happens. So that's that customer experience, exponentially happier. People get things back 2 to 3 times faster than if you'd sent them an email, because it's just easier. And it's more secure. But that is the third pillar, the security. And having things not go through email is just a massive, like I said, 9 out of 10 cybersecurity breaches start an email. So taking that off the table instantly improves your security posture as a business. But that kind of third pillar for us used to be, when we started, one of the last on the list, and that's completely flipped, where people are coming in now wanting more security and that type of thing. So answering your question around the US, I think people are a lot more aware, coming back to our earlier conversation, they're a lot more aware of the security around, their data and how important that is, and they're looking for solutions. And so from that perspective, the US has been, really good, because it's a right market, but that's happening globally. So privacy and security for us have been big tailwinds, for growth. And I think we're just seeing the start of that whole kind of privacy revolution. So
that's exciting. And I guess starting out with just with different goals, has that meant you've had to do a fair bit of pivoting sort of behind the scenes as well, in terms of things like ISO certifications and varying other kind of regulatory sort of hoops you've had to jump through to really kind of toughen up from that security perspective? Because you really would have to double down to get the confidence, I imagine, of a portion of your clients.
No, definitely. That's a big focus and big part of what we do. We spend a lot of money on security penetration testing and that sort of thing. But the standards, we're SOC 2, Type 2, and HIPAA, and all of the types of acronyms that are out there. I think it creates a safe harbor for your clients. They can say, all right, well, you guys have reached these certifications. I think transparently, as a startup in the early days, it was quite onerous. We embarked on that pretty early to get it's our first SOC 2 certification at a time when we were, pretty small, 10 staff or something.
Wow.
And you're having to have security controls for this and swipe cards and everything else. It was quite tough in the early days, but it actually brought about a really good rigor in the business of doing things properly and classifying data and storing in the right places, all that type of stuff. And then as we grew into the certifications, and that's been, it's really good now, because we're sort of few years down the track, and it's all just part of BAU business now. But
and that's how you want it to be with security, don't you? And I've seen different startups where they will take security seriously at different points, and sometimes you're looking at a business and you get a bit of a view in, and you talk to some of the internal folks around some of the practices, and it's like, oh yeah, you're very much in the startup phase on the security front, but I'm always encouraged when I see those who take the security side seriously, really early on, because if you can build that into your DNA, then that kind of just continues to flow with you as you scale. Whereas if if your foundations are a bit rough around the edges from that perspective, it can be a lot more work to try and catch up later.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think to the earlier point around New Zealand, sometimes there'll be an app that I'll be asked for credentials. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how are they treating this information? If it's a big global player, you think you hope that it's better off. But it was one of those fortuitous things where seeing that first kind of spike in financial services meant we had to go into a compliance and security framework really early on. If we'd been that kind of media side, and we were just collecting things that were supposed to be published on the web eventually on a website anyway, we wouldn't have been ready for this wave of cybersecurity and privacy. So, a lot of pain in the early days, but yeah, definitely paying off. But I think I say pain, but there's a lot you can do as a business that is not that painful. Just kind of be aware of things, and like I say, don't send customer data through email. Find another solution, or little things like that can hugely improve your posture and that type of thing. But
yeah, and often it is doing those sort of smaller things that helps. Now, one of the other things I've when we were chatting earlier was you were saying that quite a lot of your clients, their data won't necessarily sit with you. They'll use you as the way to collect the information, but then you can hand it off into whatever their sort of preferred data repository is. So you don't necessarily have to be a point where people have to worry about leaving data with you either, right?
Oh, absolutely, and a large majority actually do that. And so we've got native integrations with things like OneDrive and Dropbox Drive, all those types of things, where you can use us for the seamless collection of all the data, and we can do the conversion and cleanup of all the data and renaming, and then drop it all off into your system and have it all just kind of go there. And but there's options. People can have it in both, have it just on our side. I think we're talking things like Salesforce. It's really expensive to store documents and data in there, so that's where people would integrate. They'd have the link back to us versus there.
Okay. Yep.
There's flexibility in options, but a lot of people will happily just kind of have it go through and then vaporized. So but we're getting more and more into being able to transform the data for them on the way through. So we released an integration not too long ago with a fraud detection tool called Fortero, which can check the documents as they're coming through for tampering, those types of things. We've got some OCR things that can redact things like tax file numbers. It's particularly for our Australian customers. TFN numbers over there have to be redacted to supply or to end off documents. So, more and more we're seeing, as us being a conduit for collecting the data and dropping it off, we can also expose it to transforming the data for people, so they're getting it exactly how they need it, seamlessly from their clients, securely, and it's going into the right place, all named correctly, etc., etc. So, lots of benefits all around.
Yeah. Oh, it's really exciting. Well, what's next?
Yeah, well, there's a few things under wraps. Like we're working on a whole whole new release, which will be looking to come out later in the year, with some exciting stuff. But I think, the way everything's going, as I've been saying, it's around data and building in. We'd love to partner with some more customers or tools that customers benefit from to be able to transform data. We've got some pretty cool stuff that's happening there. So, more of the same. It's really growing and getting more and more value for our customers in the space. We solve this problem really well for them. So that's the SaaS model, solve it better and better, and keep ramping up in the US. And our goal, we want to be the global standard for requesting information. That's our vision. So when you need to get something off someone, you wouldn't send them an email, you'd send a file invite. So that's the vision.
That's good.
We're charging off to the moon, just like India.
Fantastic. Well, all the best with that. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, James.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for listening in. Thanks for joining us. And of course, thank you to our show partners, Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. We'll be back again next week. And if you've been watching the live stream today, be sure to go and follow or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And of course, if you're listening to the audio, which tends to be the large majority, and you're not following us from the video perspective, you might enjoy sometimes catching the video content or the live streams. And you'll find NZ Tech Podcast there on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And I guess probably our most popular channel for the video is LinkedIn, and you can get to that just by following myself, Paul Spain. All right, thanks everyone. Catch you next week.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.